Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today we're taking a look at a very recently released aircraft from Just Flight for Microsoft Flight Simulator. It is of course the BAE 146 Professional. This is an aircraft we've been waiting for a while. I have shown it on our stream, a preview build, but now the full model is out there, which means you get all the variants that we've been discussing, all the liveries, and lots of new features have been added. This is the real deal. This is a highly detailed simulation of a proper commercial airliner in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I am a big fan of it. I've, like I say, used the preview build. I previously flew it in X-Plane 11 as well, so viewers of the channel have seen this aircraft a few times, and it is a lot of fun to learn. It's a very unique airplane with lots of different features. It handles really well in the air, which is another thing I like about this particular add-on for Microsoft Flight Simulator in particular. It is one of the better handling add-ons I've used, so very excited to share it with you today. We're going to look through the different variants you get. We're going to look through what they've included since the preview stream. We'll also take it for a flight and show you some of the handlings and the systems so you can get an idea of whether this aircraft is going to fit into your hangar or not. But yeah, it's a really lovely machine, and there's lots of things to look at today. So we're on the ground in Jersey, but let's start off by taking a look at the variants and liveries you get. Just before we get started, I'd like to remind you about our partnership with Apex Gaming PCs, where we have some custom 320 Sim Pilot flight simulator computers. We have the Bus and the Manta. You can customize them on the website. You'll also be supporting the channel if you do buy one. So let's choose our aircraft, and as I said, we have lots and lots of variations included in this package. It's really quite special. So of course we have the 146-100, the original model up here. We then have the 146-100 CC2. So this, if we go in here, is the military version. So we have the Royal Air Force flight that's used to carry the Queen around. If we go back, oh no, not like that. The aircraft selection in the 146-100, just to show you, there's loads of liveries, including the Dan Air livery, the launch customer for this aircraft. We've also got Air UK. There's some really nice retro liveries in here. Formula One even, pretty good fun, and the old Jersey European, which I'm sure we'll see on this channel at some point. There's United Express. So CC2, then we move on to the 146-200, slightly bigger extended version, as usual, the sort of traditional naming style. In here we can see lots of liveries. You've got a few North American airlines, Air Canada as well, Continental there, Qantas Link down for Australia, US Air, which is that's quite smart. And a Brussels Airlines livery. So they're all included with the 146-200. So here we have the quick change model, the QC, which can be converted from cargo to passenger operations relatively quickly. So we have Titan, they run sort of charter operations in Europe. You've got TNT, obviously a cargo operator, and then we have the plain white one, so for maximum flexibility. We can move on to the QT, which is the cargo variant. This stands for Quiet Trader, heavily leaning into that quiet idea. We got the Titan Cargo here, TNT, and Set Australia Cargo, all looking very smart. And finally, the 300, my favourite one. We got more passenger variations here, including some, again, more smart livery. So a really impressive selection of some of the liveries you could ask for, really. There's British Airways, you get the more modern or the latter Flybe livery, KLM UK. All big operators of this, and finally there is another cargo variant for the 300, so the TNT, Australia Express, and a plain one. So lots and lots of liveries and lots of variations to enjoy, so it's nice to see that. So we're going to take the 300, no surprise, as it's my favourite, and we're going to put it in the Flybe livery, which will also probably be of no surprise to long-time viewers of the channel. We're going to set it up in Jersey, and we're just going to have a bit of a look around it. So the 146 is a commercial regional airliner that was used to get in and out of smaller airports, and in particular noise-sensitive airports. So that's why it has 4 engines, but therefore small engines, so a little bit quieter than if we had 2 bigger engines. An example of that would be if you've ever seen a 380 take off and then you hear a 330 take off shortly after. The 330 is significantly more, or it's noticeable how noisy that aircraft is by comparison. It's also one of the later British built aircraft, so it was made by British Aerospace, and its design was used up until 2001, although the Avro RJ did come along and was used a bit in the later stages of the program. It's no longer built, and the largest operator was Swiss, who've also got rid of it now, but it's an airplane that I've met people who've flown, and I've met quite a few people who flew the 146 actually, and it is one of those aircraft that is just loved by pilots who've had it to fly. So it's Got lots of unique little features, some things that you can see that got transferred into Airbus later on, which is quite fun. Let's start off. So this is loaded up at the gate, cold and dark, of course, and you get this EFB. So this is all very nice. You can log in to your SimBrief and download your OFP if you want to. You can also get a map. This is not using Navigraph. This is just loaded in straight away. So quite impressed with this, quite fun. I have not seen this done for a little while. It reminds me of Avitab in X-Plane 11, so that's nice. And you can center on the airplane. You can't use Navigraph for your actual charts if you want, straight into the EFB. If you don't have it loaded in, I've got the Navigraph toolbar option, of course. And then here's the aircraft. So let's plug in some ground power. Open up the forward passenger door, forward service door. Let's open up the cargo holders. We need to get some of that in. And we'll have some passengers coming onto the rear of the aircraft. I'll open up the stairs and we've got chocks in place. Good. Okay, you've obviously got states where you can set it to cold and dark, ready for takeoff and turnaround, and some nice announcements that you hear through the cabin. So nice little quality of life things there, I always call them. If you look over here, we've got the configuration for the aircraft. So we can have pilots in the cockpit, and load the interior cabin, presumably for a frame rate issue, although I haven't found this to be particularly heavy on frames, but I run my system at a locked 30 frames a second for recording reasons. Some things as well, you'll notice FMS navigation built right in here. So if we look down here, we have the variant with the FMS. This yoke quite big and in the way, you just hit pedal adjuster and it goes away. So we have an FMS here based on the working title FMS, which has been very popular, very nice, and you can use it, as you can see up here, with LNAV. Let's find it there. It's lateral navigation. So if you want to use this airplane like a modern airliner flying LNAVs, departures and arrivals without having to go radio A to radio 8, then you absolutely can. Now it is included at the tick of a button in all the different variants that you should choose. And then obviously you're loading up of the aircraft here. So let's take a look at the outside. So I've set it to be quite sunny because I wanted to show you the texturing on this model. As we move around, you'll see the sunlight glint off the fuselage, and you can see all the little marks and stains and the fingerprints and so on. And that really runs throughout the whole add-on. This is really, really impressive. So obviously we're used to in Microsoft Flight Simulator seeing the windows and so on. But you'll see as we get round to the wings, there's a whole much more built into it. So this is what we wanted to see with Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is where the engine of the simulator is really enabling us to have such wonderful texturing and modeling loaded in. You can even see there's the heat from the GPU, incredibly noisy things. They really ruin opening the windows on a nice hot summer's turnaround because of that. So you can scroll up to the wings, and as we'll see here, plenty of detail, different textured finishes for the different materials. You've got the streaks back along the wing, which is obviously a very common effect as the dirt and grime. Usually it's bits of grease actually that come out from the hinges and leaks back, which gives you that shiny effect there, all modelled, yeah, just as you would hope. So this is, as you can see, a very, very pretty model. And they've got this attention to detail on all the different variants as well. So obviously this is just the 300, but there we go. And look at that dirt and grime. Definitely not brand new. It feels like it's been a used aircraft, and that is what you'd expect. Most airliners, they can be, I can tell you, a couple of years old, not even a year old, and they can look worse than this. It's just what happens to them when they're used. They are obviously practical tools, so expect a bit of grime. You can see the cabin, 3D cabin from the outside as well. See all those doors, cargo doors at the bottom there open up. T-tail configuration is quite unusual these days, but here it is. A few unique handling characteristics to that sort of aircraft. And then at the back we have the big speed brake. So this whole section will open up. We'll see that in flights later on. So a lovely, lovely model. This aircraft does have an APU at the back, which makes it very practical. It is a full jet airliner. Doesn't have many compromises in that sense. And it's quite chunky, of course, having a 3x3 fuselage, which is a bit unusual for a regional aircraft like this. They called it the Whisper Jet. Sounds like a good piece of marketing to me. But still, it did have a lower noise profile than it could have otherwise had. So, oh yes, and of course, we've got to look at the landing gear. So the landing gear, very popular with pilots because it's trailing link. So I've said this before, but I will say it again. People love trailing link landing gear to land on. As you can see, it hinges in front of the main wheel. So instead of the wheel compressing vertically into a strap like it does on a lot of aircraft, it's got a hinge point here. So as you land, that soaks up and just goes straight into the shock absorber here. It all just works very nicely and can soften out some landings. So yeah, 146 is a famously nice aircraft to land. Great piece of modelling there with lots and lots of well hidden parts that have been put in the right place. So very impressed with that. Right, let's jump into the flight deck, and I'm just going to show you some of the power up and how these systems are modeled. But needless to say, it's pretty much all there as you would hope and expect. By the way, here is the cabin for you. Now, to get the airplane up and running, it's got the built-in Microsoft Flight Simulator checklists are supported, as you would hope. So here we go to checklists, flight deck safety, and you can just run through them. I really like this. I think this is something I'd like to see in most add-ons in its full use, because it's just really handy to have. Why wouldn't we use this? Landing a lever down. Weather radar is where is the weather radar? This airplane, there we go, it's right in the middle there. So that is off and 15 degrees up, I hope. Transponder, standby, air brakes and flaps, in and up. So as you can see, we can just tick through it, nav lights, high and in. So what I'm going to show you is just the fact that this aircraft is incredibly, has a unique overhead panel that's, if I get the right keyboard shortcut, which are all assigned, so that was Control 7, there we go. We can look up on the overhead panel, and yeah, it's got these white rocker switches, so quite unusual design. It's the easiest way to see if you're looking at the 146, although another way is to look at these 4 engines. But if you're thinking you're looking at the 747, just look at the overhead panel, and that gives it away. It is quite unusual. So we can go up to lights, and let's have high on the nav lights. This flight deck is, it's not all exactly as you'd expect, but you do manage after a little while. So batteries, which are over here, on, and as you can see, starts to come to life, and you'll start to recognize this as a pretty standard airline experience. Park brake on and yellow. There's a yellow and green, just like the Airbus has, but it's the yellow system we want to have that set to. Master switches can all come on, so that's again on the upper overheads, and then we're going to turn on yaw damper masters, autopilot masters, avionics masters, and I've probably missed some. So we'll certainly stream this aircraft in the future. Where's the anti-skid? Anti-skid should be on. There we go. Lift spoilers, yellow and green, both on. So AC and DC bus type, they're down here on the electronics panel. Can both go to auto. Standby inverter to arm, which is there. And then we have the standby generators arm there. So these are the sort of backup systems. Generators 1 and 4. So the generators on this aircraft are on the engine 1 and 4. So they can go both to off reset, which is what they're at. I think, yeah. APU generator can come on. We aren't using it yet, but we're going to have it on ready to go. Fuel pumps left inner on, so this pump comes on, so we get fuel to the APU. Engine fire handles all in, so they are up there, and they are in. APU start. Now this should be quite simple. Just hit start, and up it goes. It says low oil, low pressure, but that's fine as it powers on. And there we go. That will come to life, and hopefully our generator will take over. Now, I didn't use the external power, I don't think, in the end and all that. There we go, external AC, I could have switched on, which would have helped. There we go. But you can obviously start the APU just using the batteries. APU, RPM, and TGT. So here's the temperatures, all modelled. There's the RPM at 100% ticked. APUs often run at 100%. It's not too unusual. APU air packs on. So we can now go over here, and we can have the APU air on to provide some air conditioning to the cabin. We've got fresh air, ram air shut. Let's have the packs on. Great. Landing gear indicators, 3 greens, so 3 greens over there. Master warning switch tested and norm. Now let me see if I can get this right. Master warning system. I think that's the right button. I feel like there's another one I should be pressing. So let's have a look for it. There it is. So, yeah, that's good. They've modelled the viewing as well, which is nice. I just wish... Yes, click it and it stops. Perfect. So, master warning system tested. Overhead annunciators tested and norm. So, there'll be lots more tests you can do. If you look up here, if I go to the upper overhead and get rid of that checklist, you can test all these systems. And lo and behold, they didn't mess around. They're all modelled as you would hope. So, very nice. Again, this is the real deal, proper model aircraft here. DC pump on yellow, so we're back over here. So let me turn on some lights. Obviously that's all modelled, and I will show you some of the lighting later on. Right, so we need to go up to the hydraulics, which are on the upper overheads. And we're going to do DC pump on. That's rising the pressure in the yellow system. And then that's checked, so we can turn that off. AC pump and PTU on, so let's turn on the AC pump. Does the same, and then I'm going to run the PTU to check that it can also power the green system, which it can, so that's good. And how does that end? Let's drag it out. On, green, rise, off. Yeah, so PTU off, and AC pump can go off as well. Good. Flight deck emergency lights. Lighting is all over here. No, in fact, emergency lights I think are down here. There we go. So in the middle there, they are armed. Let's shrink this slightly out of the way. And yaw dampers both on. So yaw dampers are down here. Again, there's things that you get used to, but they get quite simple. Oxygen mask 100% flow and check, so you can go down and test the oxygen mask, which is working. Oxygen main valve on, so that is over in the FO sides. And we want to make sure the oxygen valve is turned on. Don't feel like that, not convinced that's worked. There we go. And now we have main supply and passenger supply. Good. And that's it. Next is the before start checklist. So we now have a powered up aeroplane. We can turn off the external power, and we are running on the APU. All just following those checklists. It's quite simple. You just need to figure out where the parts are. But with that integrated looking around system, it's very simple. Now I'm just going to take off at Jersey and we'll do a little circuit in Jersey. As you can see in here, there's no flight plan, but we can just go to pause in it. You can see they custom built this. We're going to start at Jersey. I'm not foreseeing it being too challenging, but it's not something I've had much time with yet. It's only just arrived in this release version, so it's something I'm going to have to get used to. But if we go to flight plan, maybe if we go to next, there you go. You could load in your route as you see fit. So it has the ability for you to run it as a modern airliner, which I know is what a lot of people wanted to be able to do to give them sort of versatility on VATSIM and so on. And again, this is going to allow you to fly properly on VATSIM. It's the full aircraft experience. Just another example. On the overhead, we can flick through the different power sources and see how they're working. So engine generator 1 is offline, the engine's shut down, but APU generator is running at 400 hertz. And how many volts is that? 115? Yeah, as you'd expect. So the rest are off. External AC is also available, you can see that. But that's switched off. If I go and get rid of the external power over here, and then we go back, you can now see external AC, no volts, no hertz. So, you know, it's very nice, very nice. Of course, as we said earlier, there are panel states. So you hit cold and dark, and you get this. Now, I want to be warning you that if you, like me, run a second monitor and your mouse goes off the screen, there's a risk of you clicking one of these and accidentally undoing all your hard work, because the default view has this sitting in the corner of the screen. So I've done this in the stream, and yeah, I've done it while making this video, so just something to be aware of. Probably worth swapping to a different page once you're underway. But you can hit cold and dark, or we can go straight for it, turnaround. So you can hit that, and it aligns, well, not really aligns, but it powers up, gets the artificial horizon up and running, gets the yaw dampers on. So you can see this is pretty much where we were. Except it's got the, what are we running? So the APU is off. But yeah, so those are built in and they work quite well. You can also set it ready for takeoff and have the engines up and running. Let's look at the charts then. So we can just search for our airport. We're going to be in Jersey. There it is. And here's the charts. So I'm just going to take off from runway 26, head back round. Actually, let's do 08. So we'll taxi out 08, do a circle of the island, come back and land back on runway 08. So there it is. And we can also have the taxi chart here. So we are there, and it does even load you in. So that's a nice detail. So we're going to taxi out, take off from 08, and then make a big loop around the island, come back and land over the cliffs at 08, just to get an idea of the airplane. And we'll do some handling of the aircraft in flight. So let's get those yaw dampers on. As you can see, the little warning. So this is our little warning panel up here, like our FMA annunciator. It shows us when we're using different modes and if there's some things that aren't quite set up properly. We've also got the actual master warning panel, which is the area for all the systems issues. So instead of having an electronic screen, it's just lots of little lights. And there's lots of aircraft of this sort of era that would run like that before we had glass cockpits. So let's do the next checklist. We've got departure briefing complete, brake pressure above 2,500 psi. There's a little brake pressure gauge somewhere, and there it is, brake pressure. So it's at 3,000, so that's looking good. On the yellow system, there's also the green, which we're not using. Hydraulics are off, fuel center transfer auto. So, you know, just as we've been doing earlier, you can run through the checklists. This is the fuel center transfer is there in auto. Ice detection needs to be on, so that is over on the other side of the overhead panel. We've got ice detection, which should be guarded in the... Oh, I don't know, actually. That looks like it should be there. That looks better. On. Fasten seatbelt signs can come on. Fuel quantity checked. That is shown down here in the middle. So we've got full outer tanks. We haven't bothered with the sense tank. We won't need it today. Altimeters are set and cross-checked at 280 feet. Master warning, ground operating switch reset, red light extinguished. So that is up here, and you can pull it to reset, and it should be not lit, which it isn't. Again, nice thing to write that in. Next, we come to TMS. So the BAE 146 does not have an auto thrust system as such. What it has is a thrust modulation system, and that is what we're going to take a look at now. So to get access to this, it's just run on this small screen here. This is the TMS I assume display. I'm not sure the actual phrase of it. So we need to power it on. Can we test it first? No, we power it on. There we go. And then we can run the test to make sure it's all working okay. So what it has is it has a little bit of control over the throttles, a little bit, but it only has access to them when they're in the right range. So what we're going to do on takeoff is push the thrust levers forward ourselves, and then as they get close to the range, and we'll get that indication from here with this blue up or white down arrow to tell us if we need to move them anymore. But as we get up to the range that it can take over, it will then fine-tune them to the percentage and according to the temperature setting we put in here, the target temperature down here and so on, or the limiting temperature. So Just Flight have obviously got 146 pilots involved in the production of this, and in the manuals and the... Let me get the right view. There we go. In the manuals, and they've made videos as well to describe this system that do a far better job than I can. I just simply don't know it. But this is talking about the takeoff performance effectively now. So we've got the weights over here. You can click on this and it will set the bugs. So we're going to take off at, let's take off at flaps 30, gives us a VR of 122, which is there. So when we set the flaps out, when we actually move the flap lever, we can then click on that again and it will set the new speeds. Of course, you can choose to adjust them as you see fit. So what we're going to put into here, let's see if I can get this right. I'm going to want it in takeoff mode, so I'm going to press that. So we want the target M1% as indicated and the MCT of 857 degrees. You're going to set the ambient temperature here, so it's 15 degrees outside. And what you'll notice is if I change this temperature, so it's 35 degrees outside, then the target M1 will reduce. So there you go. So it's calculating that. So that's our target. You can see the blue up arrow telling us that we need to move the thrust levers forward before this system can engage, and then it will take over and fine tune them to meet that. And then you can also put your TGT down here setting as you see fit. So lots more to come on this. I'm going to need to do some more digging as well, but it's a really unique part of this airplane. I haven't seen it before. It's only in the 146 as far as I'm aware. I'm sure there are other airplanes that have used it, but it's the first time I've encountered it, and it's great to see it modelled in full detail. So it does take over when you get the thrust levers into the right place. Before we go, I'm just going to set the ILS up. So I'm going to put in the course of 083 and the ILS frequency of 110.9, which we're getting from the chart there. So I can go to 110.9. There is an on-off button here, by the way. It took me a long time, first time I flew this, to realise that. You've got flight director bars if you want them, which are currently holding pitch and roll. I'm going to leave those off for now. You've got the VHF nav over here as well, so that's the system number 2 to tune the ILS in if you need it. And we can set the nav course bar, so we're going to set it, which is obviously just changing our course bar down here. And I'm going to set it to 083 for the ILS when we come back in. You can just click and drag it as well, which is quite handy. Good. We're just going to climb up to, we'll start off at about 5,000 feet initially. And you can again click and drag this around, it goes. Let's go for 5. Good. And we're going to take off manually, and then I'll engage the automatics and we'll talk about them once we are in the air. I don't currently have any pushback helpers installed, so I'm going to simply start up the engines on stand and drive off. I think we'll have space for it. This aircraft operated into London City, where they would drive on and off stands closer to the terminal than this, although they wouldn't quite park in this configuration. Let's get the engines up and running then. So no surprise, up on the upper overhead, we need to get the beacon lights to on. So this is going to warn everyone outside that we're about to start. Let's put the logo light on, beacon on. That's the red light up and below the aircraft. Then we're going to put the PAX and APU air. So we come down to the normal overhead. Let's have the PAX to off and APU air off. Engine anti-ice all 4 on. This is done for the startup, quite unusual to this airplane. Fuel pumps can all come on now. So they are over here. Turn on the fuel pumps. Thrust modulation system off. So it's an interesting one. I didn't know that was in here at this point. So I'm going to turn it off then. So power off. Presumably you don't want it to accidentally take hold of the airplane. Engine start power to, so I assume you could just set the temperature and the other bugs. Start power to norm. So this is on the overhead panel. We are now looking over here. So start power is in the middle, norm. You could use the external engine master switch on. Sorry, start master switch goes on. Start power on. And then we're going to start with engine 4. So we set the selector to engine number 4. We tick. Then we go to engine start switch start, which is down here. Engine start, you get ignition A and B. You see the light flicker up here. This is a movable light, by the way, which is very cool. And it flickers as the power gets sent to the engine start. Then we're looking for an N2 of 10%. N2 down here. There's 10%. Tick. Engine 4 thrust lever fuel on. Quite straightforward. I say that. You've got to actually get the camera in the right place or set a keybind. You flick underneath and it moves into the flight or the fuel on position. Now I want to see pretty quickly after that the TGT rising, because we've introduced fuel. There's fuel flow and I want to see that it's lit. So we're getting a temperature rise, i.e. the fire has started in the engine as opposed to just fuel sitting there. By the way, I should have also set these bugs, which are for the TGT temperature on takeoff as well. And then once they've stabilized, we carry on for engine 3, 2 and 1. So very straightforward. I like the engine start sequence on this airplane. It is quite simple, as you sort of hope it would be, given how many engines you're going to be starting every day. So let's start at engine number 3. Same thing. N2 to 10, which is down here. There it is. And if I move the camera back, fuel on. There's fuel flow. All good engine starts then. So there we have it, they're up and running. So we're going to go back onto the overhead panel and go to start power, back to norm, which it was, because of course we used it in norm. Start selector and master off. So start selector off, master off, tick. Engine anti-ice not required for takeoff, so that can come off now. Gen 1 and 4 we now want to turn on. We're going to use the engine generators. Brake fans to auto. They are up on the overhead. Brake fans are in auto. Engine 2 and 3 hydraulic pumps can now come on. So they're on. So engine 1 and 4 for the generators, 2 and 3 for the hydraulics. Quite a neat little system. AC pump and PTU can go to on and auto. Heaters all on. Heaters on is down here. So we turn those on as it asks for them. Why not? I think I'll leave that in. Yeah, on. There we go, as it says. APU and PAX on as required, so we could take off using the APU air for the engines, or I'm going to turn it off and just put the PAX on for now. Engine air off as required, so we'll use the engine air for the taxi out and turn it off for the takeoff. TMS on and takeoff mode. So, sorry, let me just get rid of that. TMS, we're going to power it on, and I'm going to press takeoff. There we go. Transponder to TA, taxi lights, brakes. So there we go. As you can see, it's all quite straightforward. So let's go to transponder, to traffic alert. So the brake temperature, we can actually set it, and then we can select which brake we're looking at. They're all at 15 degrees, which is ambient temperature, or you can press the middle and it would just show you whichever is at the highest temperature, which is obviously useful for figuring out which brake is going to be limiting on cooling down for the turnaround. Also a nice cabin secured for takeoff and landing slider here. Quite like that detail. In the heaters part there, I'm going to turn on all of the ice protection, so screen heaters, so all the electronic heating, screen, the angle of attack vanes, and then the pitot heaters, which would make sense to have on at this point really as you're heading out to the runway. And that also removes the warning from the display down here. So it's time for us to get underway. Before we do, I'm just going to set the flaps. So we agreed we were going to take off with the most flaps possible, take off at flaps 30. So let's set the flaps down to 30, which is quite a lot of flap, which is there. And now we can see VR should be 122, so I'm going to click that. And there we go, the dial's now moved to the correct position for that flap setting, and that has also set the TGT bugs for us, which is great news. So they've been set. So yeah, very handy. Again, nice quality of life feature there. Good. The rest we're going to do out at the holding point. We've got a few more things to set up as we see fit. Just going to highlight now that I have separate control setups for the 146, and there are a few reasons for that. But as you can see, the power management throttles I've got assigned. I've only got 2 throttles, but I can now control each side myself, which is a nice feature. On the TCA, I've also had to assign a command to button number 8, which if I can just find it is button number 8, which is set to toggle afterburner, which I'm going to use for the synchronize feature or the control wheel steering feature. As we taxi out, we're just going to do a brake check, of course. You can actually see the brake pressure rising on the dial down there. And I've got it set to control using the rudder pedals, but you can see there is a tiller here, which you can actually drag with your mouse, which is quite impressive if you want to drive it around like that. Good, so the flaps are set. Something else I want to talk about is the flight controls. So they are run on a trim tab system on the 146. That means that they will not actually move unless you're moving through the air. All that will move is the little trim tabs on there. So they've simulated this nicely, so you can see now that as we're stationary, as I move the ailerons, yes, the roll spoilers come up, which are hydraulic, but all that we're getting on the aileron is this tiny little trim tab here moving. When there's airflow over the aileron, that whole aileron will move, and you can just see it's already starting to move as soon as we roll forward. I don't think it would actually move unless you had sort of a good sort of wind speed over it, but it's a nice detail to see in. And then obviously the faster you go, the more you see that move. And that's how the 146 controls work. The pilots simply control those tiny little tabs, which move in the opposite sense to what we would expect, which flies the control surface into the way we want it to be. It's a very neat system that was used when controls were too heavy for pilots and you didn't want to use a full hydraulic system on those flight controls. So there we go. That's what we've got. Right on the checklist then, flight instruments are checked. Flight directors we're not going to use. Trims are all down here, so you want the rudder in the center, pitch trim in the green, and the aileron trim at neutral. Config tested, so there is a takeoff config warning, which is down here, which is happy. Continuous ignition A and B if required, cabin secured. So here we can go over to our aircraft, and we can do
cabin crew, please take the seats for takeoff.
Seats for takeoff, BA. Weather radar I'm not going to use, landing and strobe lights can all come on now. So we had the taxi lights, but let's put those on, and frustratingly the strobe lights are there. Oh, there we go, cabin secure warning. Those should have all been on. There we go. Oh, might have taken a shortcut over some grass there. TMS is on and it's in takeoff mode. Flight controls, we have done our unlock and free, but we'll just run that again. And the master warning system is checked. That is the before takeoff check is complete. Next will be after takeoff. Right, so for the takeoff, I'm expecting some rotate callouts from the co-pilot. You can see here that our warnings are all good. We've got air selected on ground and brake fans are on. So brake fans are in auto, but what I'm going to do is just turn off the engine air for takeoff. I'm not 100% sure if that's the procedure. And I'm going to leave the flight directors off. We'll turn on the automatics when we get it in the air. I'm going to turn the sound up now and I'll stop talking so you can hear the takeoff noise from the flight deck of this excellent machine. Right, let's go. So
TMS set to take off.
Let me just show you now. I move the throttles up and up and up, and you see the blue arrow telling me that it can't It can't achieve it. It needs me to give it more power. We'll set it high enough, and now the light goes out, and we'll see. We want 93.7. I've gone through that slightly. We aren't moving. And now you'll see it modulate gently. It's got a little bit of control. You can't actually see them moving, I don't think. You could in the X-Plane version, but there we go, 93.7. So it has been simulated. It does it itself. Very clever. I like it a lot. Right, let's get going.
Speed alive, both sides. 80 knots cross-checked. V1. Rotate. V2. Positive rate of climb, gear up.
So now let's accelerate the aircraft. I'm going to lower the nose.
+10. Safe flight speed. Select flap 18.
And as you can see, as we accelerate, it calls out to us. So once flap 18, really nice feature. Really gives you some confidence in what you're doing. And I've got to tell you, when you get it into the air, I'll show you the yoke. You can see how little I'm doing here, and then you can fly it so smoothly and gently, and it just handles just as you would expect from an airliner of this size. It's a real pleasure to hand fly, which is what I was told about the
FTO, safe height speed, select flaps.
There you go, it's asking for flaps up, so flaps can come to up. Yeah, it's a real pleasure. It's one of the nicer handling aircraft in the simulator, as I've said. And you can hear that howl from the flaps. So that was that howl there, nicely simulated. It says the flaps run from 18 to 0, and it was famous in the real aircraft. So there's 250 knots. This is not an underpowered airplane. I used to think it was, but it cruises quite slowly, but that's just for where it sits efficiently and happily. But it has the power it needs to cruise around, especially at these lower levels, of course. So we're at 2,500 feet. There's the radio altimeter. Let's see if we can get some automatics up and running. So I'm going to turn on the flight directors. And I'm just going to show you, this has a full suite of autopilots. You need the yaw damper on, which is down here, and then I'm going to, first of all, think of which modes I want the flight directors to go into. So we do have a heading bug here. So let's go heading, let's roll the wings level, we'll just go north for a minute. So roll out here, and maybe we'll climb to 3,000 feet first. Should have really done that before I turned on the flight directors. So let's put 3,000 feet in the window. You'd get the other pilot to do this. I'm going to out arm by pressing that little button, which is there, so it already wants me to level off. Ooh, bit sudden there. And then I'm going to put it into heading mode, which is where's that gone? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Heading. There it is. So we'll get heading on the. Oh, that's me kicking the rudder pedal of accident. Heading to north, which gives us the flight director in the middle. We've got alt mode, and I can see that here. So my flight directors now, as I said, this is like the FMAs of the Airbus, which you get above the PFD. And as you can see, it says alt in green, so it's in alt capture mode of 3,000 feet, and it's in heading mode, so that looks good. And then we can engage the autopilot, not up there, despite the little button looking thing. It's down here. Autopilot on, and now it's going to fly. Now, of course, it isn't going to fly at 250 knots unless I adjust the thrust. Here I'm in manual sort of thrust range. But what you can do now is press sync, and it will synchronize the engines to match each other, as opposed to risk of them sort of resonating if you had all different sort of or different RPMs. So let's turn downwind now. I'm going to show you, earlier I showed you that I had the toggle afterburner switch assigned, and there's a reason for that. There is a feature of this aircraft called sync, which is like control wheel steering. So at the moment we're doing 250 knots. If I wanted to climb to let's make it 6,000 feet, give ourselves a bit of a climb. And then I wanted to climb in vertical speed, right, which is a normal sort of thing that we do. There is a VS mode up here, but the problem is, where do I set the vertical speed? Well, we don't have any way to set it manually. What you do is you press the sync button, it will light up in white on here, you fly the aircraft manually with the yoke into the vertical speed you want, and then you can release it and go from there. So let's do that now. So I'm going to press vertical speed, it's now in VS mode. Importantly, I need to press Alt Arm because I want it to capture 6,000 feet. So Alt White is in there, it's in armed mode. But you can see it's not really climbing, it's just sitting here at 250 knots. So I want to set a vertical speed myself. I'm going to press my sync button, which is there. I've got it set as a toggle, so you would hold it, I think, in the real aircraft, but in this one we won't. I'm going to raise the vertical speed, which we can see down here, 1,500 feet per minute, and then I'm going to press it again, and now it's released, and the aircraft should hold around about the VS we left it at. And you can see out is armed and it's climbing. Thing to watch out here is, of course, manual thrust, so the speed's going to start decaying, so we'll have to start adding power. And now it'll climb up to 6,000 feet and capture there. So pretty straightforward, but it's certainly a unique setup compared to the Boeings and Airbuses you may be used to. A lot of the control is done through that. You can see here we can also climb at IS. I can press IS mode, and now it's going to maintain about 240 knots. If I power back, the nose will drop. If I power all the way forwards, the nose will rise as it tries to maintain that 240 knots. So what if I want to change the speed it's targeting? Well, same thing. I press sync. Now I'll lower the nose. Let's say I want to climb at something silly like 280 knots. Lower the nose to there, and then press sync again, and now it'll climb at that new speed, and as I adjust the power, it'll change accordingly. Jersey, by the way, way over there. So that is the sync feature of the autopilot, and it's modelled very well. Now we're going to get capture, as we have the Alt Arm, but so important to press Alt Arm every time, otherwise it would just sail through the altitude, as I've discovered on many streams. So let's bring the power back. It's in an out capture mode. Oh, it's not quite actually. Let's see. Come on, keep going. There it goes, and now out's gone green, so it's now levelling off there. Whilst we're here, let's disconnect the autopilot, idle the throttles, and then we'll just show you how it handles at low speed and in the stall. So in the meantime, I'm going to start turning us back towards Jersey. Again, I can't say it enough, one of my favourite add-on airliners to hand fly this one. They've really got a nice feel. But let's demonstrate the stall. So this aircraft has a T-tail. The risk of a T-tail is a deep stall, where, if I roll the wings level, you'll see that if we get a high enough angle of attack on the nose, the turbulent air coming off the wings will actually blank out the elevator, and you will no longer be able to push the nose down, and you'll just be in a stall all the way to the ground. It's a dangerous feature of T-tails in particular, because of the fact that with a high angle of attack, that air going over the wing will pass over the tail, blanking out the elevators. And obviously we need the elevators to push the nose down, which is the first item in a stall. So here we go. As we pull back, you can see that it rattles, it makes a sound effect, and it shoves the nose down for you. Just as we get to that high angle of attack, which is just great. That is what the stick shaker does, and also the stick pusher, as it shoves the nose down for you to stop you being able to stall the aircraft. Now, you can override a stick pusher, and it is, it's possible, but it's a very violent thing. I have flown aircraft that feature them, and obviously the Airbus does not. It has different systems, but as you can see, that is what we are using here, and I'm pulling full back, but that stick pusher, you can actually see the elevator getting pushed suddenly down like that as we hit the high angle of attack. So another nicely modelled feature, And let's recover, so nose down, get the angle of attack unloaded. Oh, that's definitely a bit too much. Gently on the nose rise, feeding the power in. He's complaining about the GPOS because of the sink rate, but there we go. And we are out of the stall. So let's head back to Jersey, and I'll show you flying an ILS. Before we do that, I do want to point out, I'm obviously flying using radio navigation aids at the moment. So we have the ILS tuned manually. Let's put in a lower altitude in the window. But I said earlier that you can use the FMS. Let's put altitude arm. Let's have heading of whatever we've got. You can see here, you know, I've no autopilot in. It's so lovely and stable. It's a great handling aircraft. We'll put it into heading mode there, which is now in, and I'm going to put in vertical speeds. Let's engage the autopilot in. And then I'm just going to sync, get the vertical speed down a bit, bring the power back, maybe 1,000 feet per minute, and sync. There we go. So now we're descending 1,000 feet per minute on a sort of base leg. Jersey's way over there, so we can actually start turning towards it. Yeah, so we are currently flying around using the radio navigation aids, as you would for the ILS and so on, and in the terminal area. We're doing this because over here I've got this HSI, or horizontal situation indicator. Is that HS1? Yeah, HSI. Set to nav. If I flick it up to RNAV, we lose all the information because now it would be using the FMS information. So that's, if you wanted to fly around using this and your more traditional lateral navigation modes, you would now go to RNAV, and then as you got in the terminal area, swap to nav, and now we're using our tuned ILS, and you can see 20 miles out, and it's over on our, I think we've gone a bit south of it maybe. And see if I go to map where we are. Yeah, we have. We're aiming over there. So we're going to come up from the south side. So let's bring that all the way around, inset from the other side. Also, I've got the NDB, of course, so I can swap this needle from VOR to ADF. Doesn't have a DME for that, obviously. But if you want to, you can do that. I don't use those very often if I can avoid it. So we're coming up to the ILS now, pointing in towards the airfield. I'm going to arm for lock, and you can see lock's gone green. And I'm going to go to GSL for glide slope, which is just coming in now. We're going to slow the aircraft down, so I'm going to use the air brake, which is that big air brake out the back, modelled. I love it. And I want to point out something else. They've modelled quite carefully. You can see my throttles here are not quite at the true idle, even though I have it set. There's no reverse axes, by the way, so you don't want any side of that because there are no reverses on this aircraft. And
speed checked below 205. Select flaps 18.
So flaps to 18. There they come. By the way, we're going to do a full flap landing, so 33, but so 128 is our VREF, but we'll do that once we slow down a bit more. And then we set the flap lead route. We can click on that. But yeah, so in flight, it has a flight idle balk, which means you can't bring the thrust levers below it. So that is simulated, which is really, really great. So I currently got my hardware thrust levers right back at idle, but it's not an issue because the Just Flight have added it so that you can't go below it. And then when we get on the ground, that will come back to actual idle. No reverses on this aircraft. So moving down the glide slope now. 7 miles out, 2,700 feet, which is about right because it is up on a hill. And there's the runway appearing in front of us. A little bit turbulent coming off the island. So we're going to take it in for a landing now. Landing this aircraft is quite interesting. In London City, if you watch videos, they actually had... There we go, they want the gear down. So, gear comes down. Beautiful piece of modelling on a very complicated piece of gear. Of course, by this point you'll notice that I've missed a lot of checklists. So I have the landing lights on. Let's start getting some flap out. It is, yeah, it's just lovely to fly, and this is showing how capable it is with the automatic. So if you want to run this on VATSIM, you'll have absolutely no issue. Luckily, it has the same number of detents as the Airbus, so if you're using the Thrustmaster TCA, you've got flap 0, 1, 2, 3 and full, so you can use it as you would plan to. So it's flap full. Now I'm going to click on the card, and I want to see a VREF of 128. There it is. So we don't want to get any slower, actually. That's about it. Speed brakes are in. No automatic speed brakes on this. We have to, after landing, no reversers to apply. We have to do it all ourselves. So we land, we lower the nose gear, apply the manual brakes, and someone needs to deploy the lift spoilers on the wings. Which will, the one lever will deploy the rear air brake and the lift spoilers here. Okay, so that's stabilising now. By the way, whilst we're here, let's do the night lighting. Got to show you that. So if I move it through, I've already turned it all on. There you go. You can see all modelled beautifully, and as I showed earlier, you can actually move them around, which is just amazing. And there's another little light here that can be angled if you turn it on. There it is. Look at that. Just great fun. So they've done a great job with the lighting on this aircraft.
1,000.
There's 1,000. We are stable. All these dimmer switches, of course, are in the right place. There you go. Turn that one down a little bit so we can see the horizon. Now, I've no idea how the landing's going to go. I'm not particularly good at this aircraft. There's the autopilot off. Flight directors, by the way, automatically switching to go around mode in case you need to go around, because we're not going to use them for the landing now. Power set where it was doing pretty well. I'm sure I've got that thrust management system in the wrong mode at this point. Currently it's in sync. I think there's a descent mode as well. What the descent mode does, yeah, you can see it over there, there's a DES mode. That is designed to stop it from going too low on the power, so you don't idle the engines too much, and therefore it can't pressurize. Because if the engines are running at too low an RPM, then it will struggle to supply enough bleed air. Right, over the cliff now, so the sudden ramp up of the rad out. Getting a bit choppy. Should have a light headwind on this runway. That's what I set up anyway.
Light slow.
Oh, bit low there.
50, 40, 30, 20,
Idling.
10.
Ground idle.
Touchdown. Ground idle. Speed brakes out.
See
Manual brakes.
yellow and green spoilers.
And there we go. It's often much harder to get short rollouts on aircraft with without auto brake than it is the bigger aircraft with a good auto brake system. And welcome back to Jersey. You can see there I had to deploy those speed brakes, but you get the wing lift dumpers and the air brake at the back. So this one just slows you down. These ones will dump the lift off the wing and therefore put more weight on the wheels, so you can get your brakes applying more efficiently. Lovely. So hopefully this has given you a bit of an idea of what this aircraft is all about, and you can decide for yourselves whether this is going to be something that you think you can use in your hangar. I will certainly be streaming this aircraft again in the future. I absolutely love flying it. I love hand flying it. I love the quirkiness of the systems, and this is just such a great simulation of it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful model to have in the simulator. Very happy that Just Flight have brought this to us. So thank you to them for sending this one over, of course, as well, I must say. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. As I said, I hope it's been useful for you. This is quite a lovely machine to get to have the privilege of flying around in the simulator. So expect to see more of it on the channel soon. There'll also be plenty more videos and live streams coming in lots of different airliners over the next few weeks and months as we get more releases in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and of course our selection of excellent X-Plane airliners as well. So plenty of guides, videos, streams coming. Do please subscribe if you'd like to see more of this. Otherwise, we'll see you again in another video or live stream in the future. Bye bye.